拄啊，大家听了可能有了雾煞煞啦，吼。有时讲伊的 grandpa， 还是 grandpa 的 father， 还是啥物吼？有啥物问题，还是要讲些啥？希望即马来发问吼。
Yes, so one of the Mr. Tsai, is that one of the reasons that your dad now decided to bring your children and wife to Taiwan because of the 228 incident in February '47? Because you see, witness that massacre of the.
Yes. That's why.
That's why it's not safe for.
Yeah, he was there with the UN.
Oh, I see. Even in the UN, but it looked like a Taiwanese. You may be killed.
Yeah.
Actually, I have a question. I noticed the similarity of going to Seattle and then go to Chicago. Like, is that a normal thing that time for overseas students to kind of follow that route, or is it just random or fate?
Not sure. I don't know how. Yeah, not sure how they ended up in Chicago, other than the school was available to them at that time.
You know, Doshisha was a Christian-founded university, and my father's father, so my grandfather, and also my father's older brother, I think both advised him that war was going to break out, and that he should talk to the professors at Doshisha to help him go to the United States to study. And he had already decided to enter the theological school. So it was his professors at Doshisha and the people they knew at Chicago Divinity School. And that's how our dad ended up there. And I don't know about your dad.
Well, I heard that my father ended up going to Walla Walla, Washington. Where the heck is Walla Walla, Washington? I think that there was a missionary in Tamsui, and her name was Miss Sutherland, and she was an elderly lady, and she grew up in Walla Walla, and she retired to her hometown. And that's the only reason I can think why he went to Whitman College, because the first passport, or the first visa, student visa he got, there's a British consulate in Tamsui, so he got a visa to study in Canada, because, well, Mackay was Canadian, right? So I can see that connection. But then 9 months later, he changed the visa to study at Whitman College. So something happened, and I think it had to do with this Miss Sutherland.
这个早期留学，真侪满是先走去东部，咱看遐头前5、6个相片，纽约，遐较出名的大学，拢真侪人去。这边邮币展览的时，伫 email 开始通知，有接到几个人的回应。包括阿家兄，伊讲1971年伊来西雅图时，就是蔡牧师去机场甲伊接的。因老爸和蔡牧师是同学啊，还有一个谢庆文先生，伊讲伫夏威夷，捌和蔡牧师做伙伫第两位的厝遐做伙食饭，所以也有印象。搁一个嘉耀东博士读化工的，也讲捌去西雅图，伫因兜过2暝，伫遐食真新鲜、真好的即个料理。 拢还会记啊，叫我甲带甲睡倒遮。
还有没有问题？
Can I have another question? The Morikawa family is from Los Angeles or from San Diego?
San Diego.
San Diego.
San Diego. And which concentration camp they go into?
The only one that went was my mother, but because she was the oldest and they had a greenhouse business.
Oh.
And, there actually was a choice. By a certain deadline, you had to, if you were of Japanese descent, you had to move from the West Coast at least 200 miles. So, in a way, the Morikawa family and 4 or 5 other Japanese American families, they had they loaded up their cars and they went down to Caltech, where Uncle George was and another maybe a Japanese American boy. They picked up those boys and they continued on to Texas, where they had an address. And then when they got to Texas, the little town in Texas got really upset because all of these Japanese were moving in, and they got afraid, so the sheriff had to come and chase them out of town. And then they went up north to Chicago. That's why they ended up in Chicago. Isn't that right? Yeah.
But your mother stayed behind to take care of the family business, and so she went to Santa Anita.
Yeah.
Santa
But
Anita.
she was only there for a short time because as soon as the family got settled in Chicago, she left.
Before they sent it to Manzana. Last year I visited Manzana.
Oh,
And
Manzana.
there's a big, in late April.
Yeah.
Always there's a 70 years anniversary for them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think all the Taiwanese Americans needed to know the history about
Yeah.
this and the executive order of 9066.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's,
Yeah.
and we, 他表示過有看將個名吼，會告訴人的美蘭下甲你的 sister, and that is very good for us to know that the history. And one thing most touched me is at the end of the article it say that your dad is a warm-hearted, good faith. Then most appreciate I was touched me was that even he left Taiwan and for more than that long, and it's still our heart, it's still there. And I grew up in Taiwan and born in Taiwan and grew up in Taiwan, and I immigrated here to adapt it to this country at the age of 25. Since then it has been 43 years, but my heart is touched to
Still in
both.
Taiwan.
Yeah, but both adopted father like here, and Taiwan is the mother give birth. That is what then there's a movie called Farewell to Manzana, and that is a very important movie. All the Taiwanese Americans needed to see. Farewell to Manzana. That is a story about the Japanese American that's been driven to the concentration camp.
Right.
And one of the officers asked the Japanese Americans, say, you love Japan or you love the United States, or which country you are faithful to it? And the answer is, if your father and mother fight each other, you want them to kill each other, or you want them to peace. That is, I learned that from that movie. Farewell to Manzana.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm not ready to ask a question. I just want to share a little, we maybe cross the experience. I just came back Monday from Seattle. I stayed 5 days, the first time. Yeah. So you two families right now still in Seattle?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay, I tell everybody, that right now the weather almost the same as the temperature here.
A little colder.
Seattle give me very special, the feeling. Okay, the one day, okay, the sun, you can see the sun and cloudy and rainy. And happened the same day. Every day the same. And okay, I know your family, your grandfather, one day came to United States. Maybe they studied in Seattle, so they stayed there, right? But right now, why I went to the Seattle? I go to see my daughter. My daughter just moved there. So right now the young people, a lot of young people moved there because the big company there.
Yeah.
But I like Seattle. Very good. Yeah, very good. You can see. Always can watch the sea, around. Yeah, not too big.
Yeah.
Because Los Angeles too big.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you can finally breathe in Seattle.
Yeah.
Very well. Any other questions? Actually, I have a question. Because I understand both of you are all from, grandmother was all Morikawa, right? Like, what were their relations? Are they sisters or cousins?
Sisters.
Our mothers were sisters. Her
Okay.
mother and our mother were Morikawa sisters.
And Aichi introduced Anna
Yes.
to.
Yeah.
Yes.
Very convenient.
Uncle Aichi was engaged to Rio Sai first. I mean Rio Morikawa first.
So 2 years later, then.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then this exhibition started about Uncle Aichi.
Okay.
And then we got hooked into it. So it's the same thing again. So thank you, Sai family.
My next
Uncle
question
Aichi.
is like, since you both were from two different cultural heritage, like how do you define yourself during your earlier childhood? Like, are you Japanese American or Taiwanese American, Chinese American? Because we know Taiwanese isn't really a formed identity back then until like recently. So back then, how do you guys identify yourself when you're among mainstream?
You know, I always tell this story. When I was in elementary school, the teachers would say, we have to do this demographic count. So everybody who's Japanese, raise your hand, or Japanese ancestry, or Chinese, or Filipino, or Caucasian. And so I always raised my hand twice. And then the teacher would count, and there'd be one more vote then, but that's how I saw myself. However, I would say that growing up, I think it was more in the Japanese, it was more in the Japanese culture. My dad had a Japanese Congregational Church, and so of course he knew Japanese, he knew Taiwanese and English. My mother knew English, that's her first language. She was born in San Diego, and Japanese, though her Japanese was not as good as my dad's. So, because he was educated, reading, writing, formal education. So I guess I'd say, I think the Japanese influence was stronger.
Yeah.
And then you lived in Japan.
Yeah. I would say, because we grew up in Japan, 1946 to 1963, but I think my sister Chu was the closest to my father. She was the middle child, and she's the most, I hate to say Chinese, the most Formosan of everybody. And another thing too, when you explain to people who you are, say, yeah, my father, you don't say Formosan, you say Taiwanese. And they say, oh, you're Chinese? Well, no. It's that distinction, I think, most Americans don't understand.
Do you speak Japanese at all?
少しだけ。
少しだけ。Let me introduce one of the two of the audience. I mean, Mrs. Tsai. She grew up in Tainan, in the girls' school of the Joe girls' school. The boys, Dr. Pastor Tsai is from Joe boys' home.
girls.
That Joe, that's it pronounced in the Japanese, Changrong, or Evergreen or whatever. And she is graduate from a girls' school of Joe. Yeah, right?
我今天来的啊，是看到那个。
讲台湾不要紧啦。
哦，我来吼，就是看到迄个蔡爱智吼，伊即个名吼，啊，我就是伫台南吼，在台南吼，我的家族吼是医生，是毋是医
Doctor
生？
and Christian from the Christian family in Thailand. Very good 讲，你个讲。
吼，
I translate.
我的家族吼，就是拢互迄个医生，迄医生。
James Maxwell.
蔡爱
James,
智。
yeah.
You said
My
brother.
Our grandfather
Brother. Yeah. You signed.
studied with James Maxwell and became a doctor.
Yeah.
嘿啦
So,
阮的家族拢就是伊看，我细汉也拢就互伊看，所以我的耳仔拢定听着吼，即个传奇，即个伊在家族吼，伫台南讲拢是足高尚吼，足高级的家族安尼。我对细汉吼，怎啊迄个几岁啊，5、6岁啊，7、8岁啊吼，就定听到10外岁啊吼。所以吼，我足希望讲爱看到伊的家族安尼，所以我今仔再来。
yeah, she shared that since Tsai's family is a very famous physicians in Thailand. So when she was young and she needed to visit the doctor, it was Tsai's and your uncle.
My uncle, my
Yeah, uncle.
second uncle,
Yeah.
was also in Tainan, a doctor.
And very famous and normal. It's when the Dr. Tsai or Tsai's family has a higher class citizen in the Thailand city, and then normal family.
So second uncle had 9 children,
Wow.
and most of them are in the U.S. now.
Yeah.
And he died. When did second uncle die? After dad, right? Maybe in the 90s. And see, and they're very
93 years old.
Oh,
Really?
good.
Yeah, another lady, around 90, Miss Yang and Mrs. Huang at the back. Okay, this is the school founded by McKay. Okay, 这个黄太太啦哈，杨女士哈。And she graduated in the girl school of Tam Sui. Younger, she's younger. I mean, she's about the age of 90. And yeah, but at that time, because of the reason that all the students needed to go to Japan and pursue for a higher degree, that's because Christian school in Taiwan, like either in south part of Tainan or north part of Tam Sui, that Japanese government in Taiwan doesn't recognize the diploma of this school. So my father or your father or Dr. Tsai, Pastor Tsai, needed to go to Doshisha, that pre-school, something like for 1 year for that. Even they got a good score in Taiwan, school. They have to get a diploma,
Yes.
and that's a school that allowed all the graduates. Sorry.
It's busy man. Oh, your cousin.
Today we will be very appreciate our secretary, David Chang. In the past 6 months, he worked day and night.
Oh.
Yeah, come out this
Thank you.
exhibition.
I want to say thank you also, David, because
Thank
you know, this was a gift to us
It
to
really
be able
was.
to learn more about our fathers. And every few days, we get this email from David saying, "Oh, we need this picture," or "Do you have this?" And you know, it was a gift to us. So thank you.
That's true.
Oh, one more question. I wonder when you two family became know each other.
When
You have
together?
relatives, two gentlemen, right? One look old and one look young. I thought they are two generations, but I look at their date of birth. Oh, they are the same generation. One died old, one died young.
You mean we look old?
No, one passed away when they were
One
older.
passed.
yeah.
And here is a two family, right?
Yeah.
The interview is two family. How do you know each other?
Well, they came to Seattle when they were, what,
1963.
63.
Yeah.
So her mother and my mother, our mother, are sisters.
Sisters.
Our sisters.
You, whose mother or grandmother, the sister to the other family,
Right.
right? Yeah. How do they know? My father's, whatever, you know, my father's brother or my father married one sister or one family, and the sister, I don't know them, you know.
No.
My grandpa, especially my grandpa, I have no knowledge about them.
I
So-
think our fathers became very close in Chicago and kept in touch. I know my father was very fond of Uncle K-Bang. And then, after he passed away, then Bilan and her family, or Auntie Anna and her three girls, moved to Seattle. So we were just
So we
one
kinda
sort of extended family
together.
with 7 kids and, you know, 2 moms and a dad. Yes.
But when my father died, Uncle Aichi had a dream or some kind of premonition that Uncle Aichi, he was a minister and he lived in a house. He already had 4 children. We came in the summer of 1963, and there was my mother and my 2 sisters and I. And Uncle Aichi squeezed us into their house. He already had so many children, and he fed us and bedded us down, and you know, it was really, he was very generous and kind to us. Yeah.
So sometimes we went on summer vacations, you know, we get in the car and then we drive up Puget Sound somewhere or, and you know, spend a week. So we spent a lot of time growing up
It's a
together.
kind of gift, you know. I don't have those kind of good relationship as you have, you know. Yeah.
So your family have 10 children, right?
Our,
Four brothers, 6 sisters, right?
my,
Their father.
my
Their
father.
father.
Our father had 10 children.
Yeah.
No, our grandfather.
Oh,
Our grandfather had 10
Yeah, yeah.
children. Our father had 4 children.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah, you're right, you're right.
yeah. His father is
4 and 3.
my
I
sibling.
think you
$3.
United States, you got 10 children, all this.
Nobody has 10 children.
I just thought a simple answer to that would be you guys are cousins.
Yes,
Yeah,
we
we
are.
are.
Very close cousins.
That's why we're close. We're cousins.
And very close in age, you know.
Because the year of marriage is so close, 2 years apart.
But I think it's, we all speak English, but, you know, for us to talk to our Taiwanese side is difficult because we don't speak Chinese.
Not even the Taiwanese language as well. Okay.
Yeah, we don't, do we? No. Only Chulan, my sister, I think she's pretty fluent in Chinese, yeah. Yeah.
I have a question to John's family.
Yeah.
Because your dad is born in Miaoli.
Yeah.
And your grandfather is pastor. So most of the time, the pastor in Taiwan need to be relocation many times. Then your grandfather is the best one, so he stick on the in Tam Sui since 17 to 35. That's a very long
Really?
time. My grandfather is a pastor too, and in the whole life move about 10 different locations. So do you know which part of Taiwan you original from? That's the Jones family.
No, you said,
Okay, because Miaoli is where your dad's birthplace.
Uh-huh.
And before your father give birth, he already had 4 older sisters, and maybe before Miaoli is maybe a different location. And the Hakka, that John was saying is Hakka.
Yeah.
Then your grandma is the name is exactly the Hakka.
Is it really?
Yeah, Moai. It's
Oh.
It's the Hakka.
So talk about Hakka. Talk about Hakka. What does it mean?
Oh yeah, that's okay. In Taiwan, there's about Taiwanese. About 80% of Taiwanese speak like South Hokkien, the dialect, like Amoy. Okay,
Amoy.
but the Hakka is between the Hokkien and the Canton. The dialect. That's
On the
those
mainland.
Yeah, mainland.
Yeah.
Most of the language is immigrant from there.
Oh.
Then the Hakka is minority.
Yeah.
The Hakka language speaking population is a minority in Taiwan. And then before the Japanese came, there's a lawless, a lot of places are lawless. So the Hakka has been driven by Hokkien is speaking to like Arkansas. It's the land is not even, not a plain. It's hard, but the Hakka it's work very hard.
But they call them guest people.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay,
So why do they call Hakka guest people? It's like saying like the
Yes.
Jewish people are.
Yeah, they are the guests, something like that.
Maybe a little bit like a gypsy.
No, we cannot say that. Yeah, but they very close. But when Mackay come to Taiwan,
Yeah.
he was accepted by Hakka, good leaders. I think that your great grandfather's family benefit from them. So I just curious, but some of your cousins in the United States, do you know where are they?
Yeah.
Kengo's daughter in San Diego, and the K aunt 2 daughters and 1 son here.
Yeah, now you're confusing
Yeah,
me.
that is nothing to do with the audience, so we'll talk to that later.
Okay.
I do have a question for Pastor Tsai. Like I saw in your presentation that he is very committed to help Taiwanese students come to here and study. Like what kind of driven him to do that? I mean, like that time I would imagine that to do that without all these other Taiwanese organizations or community support, it's really more of a solo one-man job. So like, what kind of drive him besides the 4 values?
I don't know. It was more, I think, it started, I think, with a lot of our family coming and then friends of family, and so it just kind of grew and grew. And I think when other families came to Seattle, they would introduce them to my father, and then, eventually they started a Taiwanese church, so there was kind of a connection to a church for them too. So I think it just kind of grew out of family and then kind of extended family. But I think that he always kind of welcomed people. And like, when we were growing up, I mean, we would see a lot of these folks, but we didn't really know who they were. But there were just lots of different people that came through.
But the Formosan Students Club had a lot of excellent potluck dinners, I remember. And my dad had the church, and we lived right by the church, and so the dinners were
meeting
often in the
place.
church, like next door. And so there's a picture on display there. And then I think there was one that we showed, I think they were playing Mahjong. You know?
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, and there weren't, you know, in those early years, you know, he went to Seattle in '48. I don't know if there were any others from Formosa in Seattle, but there could have been.
Or it could be just under the guise of Japanese American or other American, because Taiwanese American wasn't a really concrete identity. Just last question, like have they ever shared any kind of bad experience after they come here? Like, I know there's a lot of typical bad experience Asian American might have endured, but were there anything particular like stood out? Because they've been to different areas in life, and it's not like they just came here and start a shop. They actually gone through service, actually gone through military jobs, and also went to school. So, what were some kind of experience that they just felt was unforgettable, and it's something that kind of pained them or in the past as a Taiwanese American in such an early part of the United States?
You know, the stories I think of that our parents talked about were not so much their Taiwanese background, but the Japanese background. So, of course, the whole evacuation of the West Coast during the war. But when my father was ordained, he was ordained as a minister of a very small Japanese church, Japanese-speaking church. They're all first generation in Chicago. Then when the war broke out, the government said, you know, Japanese people of Japanese descent could not gather in, you know, small groups, so they could no longer worship. So my dad spent, I'd say, a good part of a year trying to find a church where they could worship. In fact, at the beginning, he advised them, just go to your neighborhood churches. But they didn't know English, so they really couldn't worship. And there was a church that allowed them to meet before the war, and then somehow the minister there, well, not somehow, but the minister there helped him get permission from the government that they could meet there. But then the congregation was resistant, and they didn't want this very small group of Japanese Christians to worship. So our dad worked on that for a long time, and then finally, because we had these letters and his writings about that, and finally the council voted that they could meet at their church, and so they did that through the war. And my mom said that her dad, you know, your mom and my mom's dad, was killed in a car accident.
Yeah.
And their driver was a
Drunken sailor.
A drunken sailor, and there were never any charges brought.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And that was, I mean, he died well before the war.
Yeah. I think he was only 50 when he died. Yeah. But I was thinking, one thing it has to do with it not specifically Formosan Japanese, but when was it when Jimmy Sai, who is Uncle Aichi's nephew, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he went to UW in aeronautical engineering. You know, he's married, had a kid or something, and so he wanted to buy a house. So he wanted to buy a house in Renton, which is a suburb of Seattle, where there was a factory that built airplanes. They wouldn't let him in. Because, why? Not because he was Formosan, it was because he was Asian. There was some kind of covenant. That was when, 60s, 70s?
Yeah, he worked at Boeing, so of course he wanted to live in Renton, and there were neighborhoods where the realtor would not show him homes.
Yeah.
On the east side of Lake Washington.
Yeah, I used to live in View Ridge. I was heard that part was restricted to
Oh, yeah.
Asian as well. And my grandfather, when he bought a place there, he was like the 10th Asian to buy the place there.
What year was that?
Was I think 80s or something. Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah. But after the war, your mother had a bad experience on a train or on a bus, and she wrote an article about it in some kind of Christian magazine.
Yes, right.
And it was, people really hated Japanese Americans. That's why they ended up in camps. Yeah. And so after 9/11, when people wanted to put, Muslim people in camps, no. Yeah, even now.
Thank God.
Yeah, thank God.
All right.
Can I have the last question?
Yes.
Okay, I have a very interesting question for Peter and Birlan. Because your fathers were from Formosa. So do you remember their last words before they die about, something about Formosa? Did they say anything about Formosa before they died?
Before they died.
Yeah. No.
Not really, I don't think.
No.
But his
But-
father was
Fairly,
buried
yeah.
in
Yeah.
Taiwan.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and when my father was getting to know my mother, they were corresponding a lot, and in one letter, he said, "Oh, Formosa is such a happy place."
Formosa is such a happy.
Yeah, and then so my mother grew up in San Diego, and he said, "Oh, well, tell me about San Diego. Is it a happy place too?" Yeah, and also he had an album, and he drew the island of Formosa, and I think he never forgot Formosa.
Mhm.
Yeah.